something on my mind that I wanted to look at. So basically, I don't want to downplay the whole new moon in Capricorn thing and what all it means. So there's something to it far, way beyond just what I was talking about earlier with the whole diva thing. The diva thing, that's kind of downplaying it, that's a minimum. And I don't mean to downplay it. We're talking, the new moon is just always about rebirth. Huge rebirth and restarts. But something I wanted to go over that I had witnessed, that I had caught on to. Well, before I get there, first I wanted to say that the whole astrology thing that I use, it's not just me excusing myself, but I work that system because it's what I've known for a long time. And I've been given some sort of a gift when it comes to being able to access parts of it that many don't. Many don't see, many don't know how to work. I have been obsessed with it a long time, but I'm not into using it for what so many you'll find use it for. Which tends to be astrology, horoscopes, which tends to be just like doing stuff for horoscope, for personal gain. I use it for archetypes. I can do stuff for relationships or success, yeah, but my thrust and my intention, my motivation is to use it for the better living, what's going on with archetypes that have to do with, the current times, absolutely current events, and the collective, not just the collective, but how the collective, what's going on in the shadow aspects of the collective can affect what may be beneficial or able to develop by free will or one's own goodwill, one's own desire to achieve the best possible in this life and what's going on now in all the chaos. So I use it archetypally. I use it for the current, you might say, ability to avoid the pitfalls that are just in astrology that might be able to do harm, actually, to where others are not able to see into, where some of what goes on that can easily, astrology and stargates absolutely are access. The gateways along just under the Earth's mantle, you might say, or not the Earth itself, but just within the aspect of Earth that makes up the dimensions of thought that are underneath what for us is a firmament or a star dome, or even a limitation to what we can participate in our quote-unquote meant to see or allowed to see and be involved in. The reality is we aren't meant to see or be involved in that. We are being held under something that's keeping us from a greater participation with our own higher developed self and selves, and where that crosses over to a good collective effort. And that's what I wanted to talk about, is right now what's going on deals with a sinister collective hell-bent thrust and effort to do detriment to the individual will and what a person can do and should have a right to be involved in. Especially, we're talking, you might say, cosmic, heavenly, celestial fullness, as it ties into basically on earth as it is in heaven, if I could borrow a term. But one thing I wanted to look into with that I wanted to talk about when it comes to that is it starts to get really dark here. The sun is going down fast, which I wasn't planning for. Okay. And I unplugged my lamp here. Oh well. I may just bring up the brightness a little bit in my editing software, but not to get too far off. What I wanted to bring up here is what's going on in the collective and how this is affecting us. I had mentioned in Station Mercury, my podcast, how there's this overall attempt to keep us in a fog of war and how basically the Fed is worthless. The stock market has already crashed. We are being kept from a panicking. And I just knew this intuitively from what I partake in astrology. Whether you want to say gnosis, just the intuitive knowing what I can do in astrology and other systems. I mentioned that right as I started seeing it now, how there's something called, I believe it's the QFS, quantum financial system, or we're talking other stuff when it comes to Bitcoin and what I've been able to talk about with cryptocurrency, how it's another currency for when this Fed does crap out and the dollar craps out and the global other dollars by any other name, the yen, the pound system, all that stuff crashing out, how basically Bitcoin is going to be money for privatized money for those who can afford to buy their way into the oncoming socialism and be on the upswing of it all. And socialism isn't going to be happening for those who are used to bring on the socialism. Something else far more sinister and totalitarian and draconian is, and what's a step below what we thought was even Marxism. And people are like, hey, what's wrong with Marxism? Doesn't that mean that it's basically the people's, the people's right of ownership? Don't people own all the manufacturing at that point? People own all the factories. It all is the people's. No, it's not. You're being made to think that. You're being dosed on something that you aren't able to process the information of any longer. And that's unfortunate. But what I wanted to talk about with this collective right now and what's going on with the January 1st, it's been called the Great Reset by some. It's been called the Great Switchover or Crossover Layover. Who knows what? I can't say all for sure. But it looks more like this. It looks like I've described it a bit in the latest episode of Station Mercury. It looks a lot like just a excess of shadow stuff that's not owned up to. It's an excess of shadow stuff that is not owned up to, in the sense that it is just a roiling, boiling, just the pot, the kettle is full. The cauldron is full that they've been working on, and it's boiling over now. To where the elites who've owned it all and paid for it all to even happen, they are able to gain the leverage and even direct the boiling over to where the middle class and the common man and the impoverished who are being harnessed to hurt the middle class aren't able to even see. They're still in a fog of war. They don't know where that roiling, boiling chaos of just shadow is going to be directed to next. And that's what it is. And it's an overabundance. And right now, what we're seeing with the new moon in Capricorn and Mercury about to go retrograde in 1.5 weeks from today, which is today is January 4th, 2022. And it's about close to 6 p.m. for me. But what's going on is there's an inconjunct with Dark Moon Lilith in the sign of Gemini. And what's going on with the new moon in Capricorn? Saturn right now in its old rulership sign of Aquarius. This is huge. What it's talking about is the collective and the reset in the collective consciousness and the reset in the shadow. We are talking about what I've written down is for those of us who are doing the individual, you might say, owning up to ourselves. That's how that works. Lights on all of a sudden. Anyways, so what is going on, as I was saying, what's going on with this collective right now and the movement right now? We are talking about owning up to shadows, copious shadows, you might say. Actually coping with copious shadows, copious overflowing flux of shadow and stuff we haven't owned up to for a long time. And right now there are individuals wanting to do the good work still, wanting to fight the good fight, and they're being challenged hardcore. Last night for me, it was a visitation. It was a very dark visitation that I had to deal with just last night. As I wasn't feeling good, my stomach was ripped up. I had to take a Privosec even, which is pretty rare for me. So a dark visitation with just intense challenging, and I felt like it came through. It came through my cathedral, which is my ambient project, which is very much. It's a hotly contested and fought over area because there are those who you might say are part of the cabal that actually think cathedral belongs to them. And I don't really ask for help very much, even though I probably should. I don't really ask for help. I don't really ask for prayers. But in terms of that, we're talking people who think cathedral is theirs. Cathedral should belong to them. Thinking that during my time, basically learning about and thinking I was part of them and not knowing what all was going on in my own just intense slumber or intense hostility, my own self-hypnosis into it all that I finally was able to break free from, though I still have the post-traumatic scars of it all that I deal with day by day, which is why stuff like last night still goes on. Because when I took on these hot points, which are the Masonic degrees that you're not told about, I took them on. And by the way, there's something that goes on with the collective. They now have basically permission granted, though I was in ignorance. Even in ignorance, for the most part, just like nature doesn't care, and this is the cruelty of it all, even in ignorance, I agreed to let them through their hot points, their Masonic degrees, their Satanic Black Lodge stuff into my body and into my consciousness to plug into me now. They can do stuff like last night's just dark meeting and dark challenge that I went through, where it was, there is no God, there is no divinity, there is not going to be help for you. That was the main theme of the challenge. It wasn't just that. That was one facet of a great big multifaceted thing that was going on, but that was part of it. And I'm used to it by now. That is nothing new and nothing huge. But in terms of if I would ask help from others who fight the good fight, etc., and are part of this whole awakening, not this wokening, this awakening, is Cathedral is hotly contested right now. Cathedral, my ambient project, is fought over. The cabal thinks it belongs to them and tries to invasively take it from me, take over it, and just constantly move in on the territory of Cathedral, which is meant to not just open people up, but it is ambient music. It is meant to help raise vibrations, raise to ascension, and what people want to do, free will, with those vibrations. Now, you're seeing what I'm going through is a direct challenge. And not just a challenge, but an overall detrimental invasiveness and takeover, and like a blitzkrieg, a barbarian rush into it. Not just in the cathedral music, but in my body of work, in my body itself, and in my consciousness. So what I'm talking about when we're talking about just under the surface, not the earth itself, but we're talking about interdimensionally, the aspect of what's underneath us that is made up of our energies and our ideas and all we invest into, what we perceive of this one linear earth that's really worlds within worlds happening within us and all around us. So we're talking about, again, a copious collective of just, coping with this copious collective, and what's going on in that collective consciousness. We're seeing a bad collective form up and a bad will towards what could be done with a good will, free will, intact, appreciative of the human soul collective effort. And then there's the effort of all this, the metaverse, AI, neural nets, just invasive transhumanism that's going on now in the sterilized consciousness collective hive mind. It is a hive mind. We'll call it a hive mind. But it's like it's a sterile blasphemous. If it gets further and further away from the source, like I was saying, the metaverse has been around and it's been called the zodiac. So my astrology study and stuff does not tie into just horoscopes and what you can get for yourself. It ties into great transmutation, transformation, empowered to the individual's free will that is not compromised by all this, the current metaverse and collective consciousness, artificial intelligence drive that's burying us deeper and deeper and deeper to where that's not just threatened and disrespected. You're right. You're right to have your own say, your own consciousness, your own thoughts is intentionally blasphemous to it, as it is being blasphemed upon and encroached upon, invaded upon, and essentially raped and drained and then tossed aside when it could be just considered, well, now it goes back into the kingdom of the shells, the clip off, back into the rest of it. And now it's just another vampiric zombie husk. And now it's been programmed back into what we need it to do. You see what I mean with that? So what's going on with Black Moon Lilith, which is the primal surge, is just going, it's getting just a boost in Gemini of just Gemini is activity, just roiling over, boiling over, babbling brooks, babbling mental cerebral systems. So, and then that is in conjunct with what just happened with Black Moon Lilith is already Black Moon, hence it's called Black Moon Lilith. Now you look at the new moon, Black Moon. A new moon is basically, you might say, to the Cabal and a lot of the satanic stuff that happens. That new moon ties in completely with the destructive, feminine, primal, surging force, very often known as Kali in the Kali Yuga. That's one word for it. There's many terminologies that just branch, and as they branch and have permutations, they just flux back into one thing. One giant collective will and aim to obliterate and destroy and then convert and pull back into where it's a constant alchemical being held in the putrefaction or the putrid vessel and is never allowed to develop from there. And that is what we call the dark firmament that's happening over and around the whole global system right now, that's based in the corporate based in the financial systems based collective effort. So in the desire to basically make your birth certificate traded on a stock market. And yeah, so right now the stock market in the Fed is worthless, has crashed, but they're keeping people from panicking. And that's this whole great reset thing that's going on now. And what better day than the new moon Capricorn as it comes around conjunct with Venus in retrograde that I just talked about. Conjunct Pluto, all forming one body. For the Cabal, which uses astrology to the nth for their own personal gains and what they can pull off with the sinister consciousness, collective effort, that is huge. They love that. They're going to be all over that, and you best believe that they are and have been and will continue to be. So you've got to arm yourself. Station Mercury is to arm yourself. Please don't be afraid of the cathedral. Yeah, it has a pyramid with the layers, which is, it almost looks like the nutrition. You've got your grains, vegetables, you got your meats and your fats and oils, but it is kind of telling. For me, it's not glorifying that, but it's saying what's going on in the world now. And unfortunately, because I've used stuff like that, there are lots of people who, but they've already been there. So for me to just be like, well, I don't have to use that anymore and it will stop, I know that's not the case. Just like I've talked about with Jessica, my twin flame. Self-fulfilling prophecy, it's called. And I was just thinking about that earlier. Just because you don't talk about it does not mean now it is not going to happen. That almost ties into that one thing, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was don't talk about. And it's dealt with. It just doesn't get conjured up. because it's conjured up behind the scenes already, and it's being used on you behind the scenes already. Oh, you can believe me. You can take my word for that and bet on that. So but just in station Mercury, I just in the last station Mercury, I'd also talked about these communication towers and how the state becomes a cluster of towers. See what I mean? Who do these 5G clusters belong to? Which phone company or other communication company help build this particular 5G box right outside on your street lamps, right outside your door? Who owns these? That's going to be the new state, actually, is the collective consciousness, the collective will hive mind starts to form up. And that's not sci-fi. And the as the collective hive mind starts to become more and more dense, we are talking about the metaverse that's really not the metaverse. It's all it is it's a repeat of the era of what we're trying to use astrology and our prayers and our meditations to break free of together through not just higher vibrations, but the ability to descend with a means to change it all alchemically. If I can use the word alchemically, shamanically, not satanic shamanically. A lot of people hear that word shamanic change. I mean Christ consciousness, you might say, or just the goodwill of those who are awakened and their heart is in the right place and their mind is in the right place. It does help to have a decalcified pineal gland, pineal, whatever you would say. I've heard it say pineal, but anyways, moving on. It does help to have decalcified. The fact is, we are all taking hits when it comes to being bombarded with signals. By the way, bombarded with signals, I've got crystals here. I've got selenite. I've got labradorite. Especially selenite and labradorite are good ones. Some of them are toxic, so be careful. But shungite will be one of the best when it comes to being bombarded by frequencies. And that's elite or noble shungite. It's like a silvery shungite. It is not the dull gray shungite, which is just about worthless. Black shungite is a bit better. You can tape it to your phone. It's cheap and easier to access. Whereas elite shungite is going to cost you a lot of money just for maybe 100 grams or more. It's going to cost you upwards of $80 about if it's real and you know it's real and you're not buying a fake. So there's lots you can use. One that is super positive for me, and speaking of the Capricorn new moon, this right here is a beautiful black tourmaline that I like to keep near me. Black tourmaline tends to have correlation or an alignment with Capricorn, especially because this is black and it deals with, not just because it's black, but it's very base root system, base issues. This clears off everything. Some will clear off some stuff. Some will still let the ability to work with other stuff through as you're clearing off. This is just known as one of the best power scrubbers, if I could use the word, clears off. Just universal clears off everything. I've even called this the exorcist stone, the exorcist crystal. It's one that you would want to have on you for that sort of thing when it's just so heavy duty, you feel like you're about to be consumed and possessed. This is for that. You don't want to be dealing with that kind of an issue. So I've witnessed those who've dealt with those kinds of issues. And if you listen to Station Mercury, I give full detailed accounts. These are my personal facts of things that I lived through. So black tourmaline, very significant. It's good for the Saturn. Saturn is the heaviest stuff in life. That's why Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn and the old ruler of Aquarius. That's why it has the Capricorn stuff, because it just helps you move cardinal Earth. It helps you move mountains of just the most nasty detritus off your personal to your transpersonal, even if you're good enough to do that. So beyond just the diva and what all the diva even means, diva is an old word from even like you might say the Hindu cosmology. Divas and asuras, you should look it up. Diva way back in the ancient was a nature spirit, while Asura is ruled over things like contracts, land ownership, marriages, betrothment, those kinds of deals. Almost like the cosmic legislature, the cosmic contract. By the way, legislature in astrology, in law, legislature and law has dealt with very often Jupiter, while the contract in things like being a baron or landowner, that sort of thing, ownership, boundaries, deciding boundaries, that's Asura, that's also Saturn. So I could go on, but I've recorded quite a bit now, and this is expensive recording right here. This is my HDV Sony recording right here. So this is Major Mater Studio. I reformat codec and everything, which takes a long time. So but I want to talk about this because I do not want to downplay what's going on right now with the overall arch and archons, the archontic parasite activity just haywire right now. What's going on with this? The reset is going on now. January 1st was no joke in terms of all those involved wanting to use that and access that. So that's what's going on now. The new financial institution, just the base just got laid down. The pipework has been laid down, but it's being officially switched over to right now, and it's still being done behind the scenes, but there are lots of us who have tapped into it all. I tap into it all not through other news outlets, but through my own intuitive bent and what I do with my scrying through my art, which I've uploaded some of my art here, and there's art just everywhere from me. And what I've been able to do with my music, which, as I said, is being hotly contested in attempts to invade, straight up invade. And it's a lot like a blockchain, but it's like an astral or psychic blockchain territory where people are they want the proof of my work. I have the proof of work as a sovereign soul. They want the proof of my work, and they're saying, as a collective effort, it is going to be ours and what we are going to do. And they're coming in there, and when they can't take it, they just cause as much chaos as they can and unleash as much of these archontic parasite gremlins into it as they possibly can. So you see what I mean? How real all this is, and just the facade that's being pulled over our eyes when it comes to it, and what is really going on with it all. So take care. I'm going to cut it right here. And what I can do is refer you to listen to Station Mercury. It is an audiobook. I know I've got probably over 30 hours of audiobook in my own personal accounts to transpersonally what's going on, and how it is more than just me collecting mass hysteria websites, conspiracy theory websites. There are truthers, there are conspiracy theorists, and there are fringe awareness outlets. Fringe awareness outlets would be the best, most respected thing. So there's real life conspiracy going on here, and I consider myself part of the fringe awareness, and I bring it to you from what I can go down into. Now is the best time. We're talking the new moon in Capricorn, the ability to go down into it yourself, see it for yourself, work into it yourself. Right now is the best open gates and window, but right now is the most dangerous time too. In terms of they see you on the astral realm, you get caught. You've got to be strong, you've got to be clear-headed. You can do it yourself. Don't ever doubt that. You can do it yourself. But you've got to be strong, you've got to be clear-headed. And again, it helps with your pineal exercises, your pineal gland decalcification, whether it's your diet and your meditation and your prayers, crystals, burning incense or Palo Santo holy wood, having spiritual encounters that are free from the priesthood pull down, those priesthood creepy cult collective pull downs, to where, yeah, it's for me, it's not about being anti-religion. It's about being anti dogmatic priesthood pull downs, to where you're right back in the hive mind anyway, and you got caught again along the etheric, spiritual, psychic, astral, dimensional, traveling nose grids, etc., to where you're transcendent of the grids, And when you're transcendent of the grid, like the Pisces symbol, you're most vulnerable. Because you are more out in the open. You're between the dimensions. You are interdimensional. You are between the matters, much like the Pisces 12th sign symbol is the crescent that looks opposite of the normal crescent of the moon would be, which is that. It's you are between phases. And between phases is generally where you can get hit and you can end up attacked. And you might say bit or electrified hellfire electric attacks between and then you have the crossing of the abyss or ordeals. So that's another whole subject. There's tons of that in Station Mercury. Station Mercury is even called, I have the little post title which says post-abyssal existentialism. But there's more to it and it goes on. But I want to cut this before I'm just taking up too much time and it seems like I'm salad shooting. So you'll hear from me again very soon. This has been John of Exoverse signing off. Oh, if I could say one last thing with what goes on with the black tourmaline I just showed you, selenite, some of the other stuff that helps with EMF and the pollution and the bombarding frequencies, is that right now Jupiter is back in Pisces. Jupiter is the old ruler of Pisces, just like Saturn is the old ruler of Aquarius. The cabal knows that, the elites know that, those who use it for wrong intentions know that, and for them that's huge. It's almost like one giant holiday. People are talking about sacrificial holidays and stuff. It's in there for a long time. And that's being accessed for all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. So you've got to take care of yourself. Right now, I would say fluorite. Fluorite is an important one because fluorite has both Jupiter and Pisces associations, and it has Saturn and Capricorn associations. So get with fluorite. Be careful with fluorite because it has fluorine in it. Fluorine is toxic. So just be careful around your fluorite. Don't drop it, don't break it, and then inhale it. By any means, wash your hands after you use it. There are so many you want to wash your hands after you use, and people don't know about it. So, but yeah, I'm cutting it for now. Thank you so much for listening to this. Take care. I'll try to do more of these high quality uploads. This has been John, signing off for now. Continue to be free. Continue to be yourself. Continue to ascend and transcend without fear, and to plunge down deep and go for that intuitive gnosis, because you need to know for yourself, because you can know for yourself if you make genuine, earnest attempts to. Stop going to all these outlets, no matter who they are, whether they're just fringe awareness, conspiracy theory, or straight up the modern media, the mainstream media. You really need the intuitive self-awareness first and foremost, above all, or you will get fooled, no matter who you're talking to among friends and fringe, etc., on and on. But okay, I've said bye like 5 or 6 times. So again, take care, be safe. Hope you had a happy holidays. 2022, let's get this right for those of us who are fighting the good fight.